Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome, everyone. If you're prepping for your A-level philosophy exams, you are in the perfect place. Today, we are putting Component 2, Philosophy of Religion, straight under the microscope. We're looking specifically at Theme 3, how religious experiences actively shape religious practice and faith. Consider this explainer your ultimate go-to exam hacker review tool. We are going to lock down the exact examples, theories, and scholars you need so you can walk into that exam room with absolute confidence.
To map this perfectly to your syllabus, we're using a ripple effect structure. We'll logically track how experiences move from the community level down to the individual. We've got Act I, the epicenter, Act 2, the macrowave, Act 3, the microwave, and finally, an exam summary cheat sheet.
Let's start right at the source. Act 1, the epicenter, defining faith and practice.
Before we look at the massive waves these experiences cause, we really need our foundational definitions. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that for this specific section of the exam, candidates actually aren't expected to provide lengthy theoretical or psychological explanations of the experiences themselves. You don't need to get bogged down in the deep psychology of visions or mysticism. The examiners want you to focus purely on the influence of these experiences on two distinct concepts, practice and faith. Notice the contrast here. Religious practice is the visible, tangible stuff. We're talking rituals, ceremonies, festivals, the daily way of life. Religious faith, on the other hand, is internal. It's often defined as a mixture of will, propositional belief, meaning, accepting certain statements as true, and deep trust. To truly grasp what faith means in this context, we can look at Martin Luther's three components of Christian faith. Luther basically took this rigid academic foundation and broke it down to show us its vital heartbeat. First, he argued that faith is profoundly personal. It goes way, way beyond just nodding along and accepting facts. Second, it involves an active trust in God's promises. That means the believer is genuinely prepared to act upon their belief. And third, faith is what permanently unites the believer to God. The massive takeaway for your exam here is that true faith isn't passive. A profound religious experience translates directly into a readiness to physically act and participate.
Moving right along to Act 2, the macro wave. Let's look at the value for the wider religious community.
This is where we see the stone hit the water, rippling out to create, shape, and totally validate an entire community's belief system. In your exam, you've got to demonstrate how appearances or miraculous events validate traditions for the community. When a founder or key figure has an experience, it serves as a massive affirmation of the belief system. For instance, in Christianity, the appearance of angels to Mary and Joseph completely affirms the doctrine of the Incarnation. And what's the resulting macro practice? Well, the entire global Christian celebration of Advent and Christmas. Similarly, the disciples' experience of the resurrected Jesus affirms beliefs about life after death, rippling out to create huge community festivals like Easter, Pentecost, and baptism rites.
Beyond just affirming beliefs, experiences also promote core value systems, and this brilliantly illustrates how direct revelation creates lasting ethical standards that literally liberate the disadvantaged. Islam, for example, was arguably founded on Muhammad's experience of the angel Jibril at Mount Hira. The words he recited formed the Quran, and that experience led him to directly challenge the exploitative wealth systems in Mecca, strongly promoting equality. In Sikhism, Guru Nanak's 3 days experience in the court of God led him to establish the concept that all people are absolutely equal. Imagine completely dismantling a centuries-old social hierarchy after just a 3-day revelation. That resulted in monumental shifts in practice, like removing the caste system. Even today, the command of Jesus to love thy neighbor ripples out into the incredible modern charity work of organizations like Muslim Aid and Christian Aid, helping people regardless of their faith.
The third major wave on the macro level is the strengthening of community cohesion. When a community shares an experience, or even just celebrates a past one together, it fiercely binds them. It leads to a shared identity and a profound sense of unity. If you need ready-to-use exam examples for community cohesion, you can't go wrong with these. Look at the celebration of Pesach, or Passover, in Judaism. The Seder rituals are a collective remembrance of God saving the chosen people from slavery. Or, for a much more modern example, look at the Toronto Blessing. This was a massive, collective religious experience that led to explosive growth in evangelical churches and deeply solidified practices related to the Holy Spirit. Sharing these events makes a community practically unbreakable.
To really impress the examiners, we want to bring in some serious academic weight. The scholar Peter Cole perfectly summarizes this macro wave. He states that many festivals are essentially structural community anchors to original revelatory experiences. As Cole points out, during Ramadan, Muslims are directly celebrating the religious experience of the Quran being revealed. During Wesak, Buddhists celebrate the Buddha's Night of Enlightenment and his profound revelations. The practices we see today are literally the living, breathing echoes of ancient experiences.
Let's zoom in now. Act 3, the microwave, the value for the individual believer. Let's move to and see how this builds by zooming in from those massive community festivals to the deeply intimate psychological impact on a person's personal faith. When discussing the individual in your exam, you absolutely must mention Martin Buber's core philosophical distinction regarding the types of belief. Buber differentiates between belief that and belief in. Belief that is simply accepting propositions as facts based on evidence. Like saying, I believe that the Pope is the head of the Catholic Church. It's purely informational. But belief in, now that is an attitude of profound, unwavering commitment, trust, and loyalty. Buber argues that a personal religious experience, particularly a conversion experience, is the central catalyst that shifts an individual from merely accepting propositional facts to possessing a deep, trusting commitment.
Peter Cole comes back to add another vital layer to this microwave, highlighting the noetic quality of experiences, which basically means the way they impart true, undeniable knowledge to the individual. Cole points out that a personal experience fundamentally shifts your perception of truth in a way that secondhand accounts just can't match. For the person who experiences it, the event provides a concrete basis for true individual knowledge of God. But importantly, even shared testimonies act as a basis for encouragement. Hearing about someone else's conversion can still serve to powerfully renew the faith of individuals listening.
This shift toward Buber's belief in results directly in restoring faith and renewing a commitment to religious ideals. A personal experience or a really powerful testimony sparks this renewed enthusiasm for active participation. It drives an individual back to their physical practices with fresh eyes. This is exactly why a Muslim might find renewed devotion in Friday morning prayers, or a Jewish person in the celebration of Shabbat. Plus, religions have built-in practices designed specifically for this individual renewal. A brilliant example for your exam is the Hajj in Islam. Muslims on Hajj perform very physical practices, like the stoning of the devil at the 3 pillars, which are profound individual acts of renewing their personal commitment.
So we can clearly see how an experience can renew someone's faith during peaceful times. But that brings us to a really critical question, one perfectly aligned with your syllabus requirements. How does an individual's religious experience hold up against intense persecution and opposition?
The answer is that these experiences often become the very armor individuals wear to survive. For your exam, you need to show how experiences strengthen faith in the face of opposition. Here are 3 distinct historical examples of believers really digging their heels in. First, the early Christians at Pentecost experienced the divine precisely while facing intense persecution, which not only sustained them individually, but inspired the ongoing Pentecost festival. Second, in Sikhism, historical opposition led to the formation of the Khalsa. This required individuals to make a massive commitment, carrying out specific practices like wearing a 5Ks to stand absolutely firm and identifiable. Finally, Paul's dramatic conversion on the road to Damascus wasn't just for him. He repeatedly used the testimony of his experience in his writings to heavily encourage other early Christians facing severe trials.
So, the crucial point is, well, let's wrap it up in our final section. Exam summary and takeaways, the complete ripple effect. Here is your complete, highly retainable cheat sheet. You'll want to lock this review matrix down. This is your strict, structured exemplification grid for Component 2. If the exam asks about affirmation of beliefs or promotion of values for the community or restoring faith for the individual, you deploy the examples of Mary and Joseph affirming the incarnation or Guru Nanak promoting equality. If the question focuses on community cohesion or the individual's renewal of commitment, you discuss the shared rituals of Peshach or the individual commitment of the Hajj. And if you're discussing modern applications or strengthening faith against opposition, you bring in the vital charity work of Christian and Muslim aid or the unyielding commitment of the Khalsa when entering the 5Ks. If you use this, you have exactly what you need to score high marks.
It is truly fascinating to see how the epicenter of a single, deeply personal experience continues to create massive ongoing ripples in the modern world. The charities fighting poverty today and the communities standing resilient against opposition all draw their strength from ancient, profound encounters with the divine. It leaves us with a pretty powerful thought. If the history of human faith was built on these moments, what ripple effect will the personal religious experiences happening today have on the practices of tomorrow? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Good luck with your exam prep and keep learning.